When a deepfake targeting his youngest son, Barron, went viral on X, Donald Trump didn't just see a political attack, he saw a declaration of war, leaving the world to wonder how far a father's fury would go against the tech billionaire who let it spread. The video dropped on a Tuesday morning, unceremoniously, from an anonymous account with no followers and a generic avatar. It was only 47 seconds long. Within an hour, it had 1 million views. By lunchtime, 50 million. The hashtag #BarronSpeaks was trending worldwide, a digital wildfire ripping through the platform Elon Musk had promised would be the world's public square. Newsrooms scrambled. Anchors repeated the phrase unverified video. But the damage was already being done with every click, every share, every comment that treated the fabrication as gospel. The rewind, 248 hours earlier, lands in a starkly different environment. The minimalist, glass-walled conference room at X's San Francisco headquarters, Elon Musk, dressed in a black t-shirt with a faded SpaceX logo, stood before a group of his top engineers and policy advisors. He wasn't sitting, he paced, a cup of coffee in one hand, gesturing with the other. The topic was the company's new content moderation protocols ahead of the presidential election. A junior policy analyst, a young woman named Priya, had just finished a presentation on the growing threat of hyper-realistic deepfakes. She was nervous, but her data was solid. "The velocity of these fakes is our biggest problem," Priya had said, pointing to a chart showing dissemination speeds. By the time our current systems flag a video for review, it could have reached 100 million people. "We need a more proactive approach, perhaps a temporary freeze on high-profile political content that trips our AI detectors." Musk took a sip of his coffee and stopped pacing. He looked at Priya, not with anger, but with the weary patience of a teacher explaining a core principle to a student who just wasn't getting it. "The answer to bad speech is not less speech," he said, his voice quiet but carrying across the room. "It's more speech. The truth emerges. It always does. If we put a temporary freeze on things, we become the arbiters. We become the ministry of truth. Is that what we want?" He didn't wait for an answer. People are not idiots. They can see a fake, they have pattern recognition built into their DNA. And if they can't, someone in the replies will point it out. That's the beauty of the system. It's a organism. We just provide the petri dish. A senior engineer, a veteran from the old Twitter days, pushed back gently. "But Elon, the new AI, is different. It's not like a badly photoshopped picture. It's designed to bypass that pattern recognition. It's designed to feel real, to manipulate emotion." Musk almost smiled. "So we innovate. We build better tools. We put labels on things. We have community notes. But we do not, under any circumstances, become the censors. The moment we do that, we lose all credibility. Free speech is messy. It has to be. That's the price of not living in an autocracy. We are the last best hope for a global town square. We can't get spooked by edge cases." He dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand, his mind already moving on to the next problem, the next engineering challenge. The human element, the potential for targeted emotional devastation, was just an edge case. Thousands of miles away, at Mar-a-Lago, the atmosphere was one of controlled calm. Donald Trump wasn't thinking about deepfakes or content moderation. He was on the phone in his office, the ornate room that had served as a command center for his presidency and now his campaign. The call was with his campaign manager, a no-nonsense strategist who was walking him through the latest polling data from the Rust Belt. "We're up to points in Pennsylvania, but it's soft," the voice on the phone said. "We need to hit them on the economy, hard. Forget the culture war stuff for a week. It's jobs, jobs, jobs." Trump listened, grunting in agreement. "Get the ads. Ready? I want them on every station in Philly and Pittsburgh. Every single one." He ended the call and leaned back in his chair, staring at a framed photo on his desk. It wasn't of a world leader or a cheering crowd. It was a picture of Melania and Barron, taken a few years ago on the golf course. Barron, already tall but still a boy, was laughing at something his father had said. There was an unspoken rule in the Trump universe, an ironclad directive understood by staff, family, and even most of the media. Barron was off limits. While his other children had embraced the public spotlight, Barron was fiercely guarded. a sanctuary of normalcy in a life that was anything but. Trump, the man who treated every political attack as a blood sport, became a different person when it came to his youngest son. The aggression softened into a quiet, almost primal protectiveness. Later that evening, that protectiveness was on quiet display. Trump was sitting on the patio overlooking the manicured lawns. The intense Florida heat had broken, and a pleasant breeze drifted in from the ocean. He wasn't on his phone. He was watching Barron, who was excitedly explaining the details of a new video game he was playing on a tablet. The game involved building complex virtual worlds, and Trump, though he didn't understand the specifics, was captivated by his son's passion. Melania came out to join them, bringing a glass of iced tea. She sat down, her presence calming and elegant, and rested a hand on Barron's shoulder. "Don't stay up too late," she said softly to her son. "You have that history project to finish." "I'm almost done," Barron replied, his eyes still glued to the screen. For a few minutes, they were just a family. Not a political dynasty, not a global brand, just a father and mother watching their son. It was in these quiet, unobserved moments that the foundation of Trump's sacred line was laid. The world could attack him, his policies, his other children who had chosen to enter the arena. But Barron was different. He was the last bastion of his private life, a symbol of the fatherhood that existed beyond the rallies and the headlines. He was the one part of his world he believed was, and should be, untouchable. And in San Francisco, the code was being written for a weapon that was about to target that very sanctuary. The video appeared without warning. It was posted at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time. The account name was @JustAsking927. The video itself was shot to look like a surreptitious iPhone recording, slightly shaky with the muffled background noise of what could be a school hallway or a common room. The lighting was imperfect, casting soft shadows on the face of the subject, a young man who looked moved and sounded exactly like Barron Trump. He was looking just off camera, as if speaking to a trusted friend. His expression was somber, his voice tinged with a weariness that seemed impossibly authentic. I wish it would stop," the deepfake Barron began, his voice a perfect mimicry of the few candid clips that existed of the real teenager. The constant fighting, the anger, every day it's a new battle, a new enemy. He, my father, he thrives on it. It's like air to him, but it's not air to me. It's suffocating. The digital puppet paused, running a hand through its hair in a gesture that was unnervingly natural. "People ask me if I'm proud. I don't know what to say, of course. He's my father. But I see the division, and I just want a normal life. I want to go to school without people looking at me, wondering what I think. I want to have friends who aren't worried about what their parents will say. Is that too much to ask? Sometimes I think his biggest regret isn't losing the election, but that I'm not more like him, that I don't enjoy the fight." The video ended, abruptly cutting to black, leaving the viewer with the haunting image of a son's quiet disappointment, the first person in Trump's orbit. To see it was a junior communications aide in the campaign's Arlington, Virginia war room. He was 24 years old, and his job was to monitor social media for trending topics related to the campaign. He saw #BarronSpeaks bubbling up and clicked on it, expecting a meme or a joke. What he saw made his blood run cold. He watched it once, then a second time, his heart pounding. He immediately took a screenshot and sent it up the chain of command with the subject line, "Urgent Potential Deepfake." The message flew up the ladder, from director to senior advisor, finally landing on the phone of Chris LaCivita, Trump's campaign manager, who was in a strategy meeting. He glanced at his phone, read the message, and clicked the link. He didn't need a second viewing. He stood up abruptly, cutting off the person who was speaking. "Meeting's over," he said, his voice tight. "We have a situation." He walked out of the room, already dialing a number at Mar-a-Lago. The initial response from Trump's team was disciplined and swift. Their internal protocols for a crisis like this were well rehearsed. The first step was to contact X directly and demand the video be taken down immediately, citing their own policies against synthetic media and harassment of a minor. The campaign's general counsel sent a formal email to X's legal department, using language that was both legally precise and menacing. "This content is a malicious and defamatory deepfake targeting a minor," the email read. "It is a clear violation. of your stated policies, we demand its immediate and permanent removal. We expect confirmation of this action within the hour." Simultaneously, the communications team began pushing back on social media, using their network of allied accounts and friendly media figures to label the video as a fake. The message was simple and repeated ad nauseum. The left is now using fake AI videos to attack President Trump's teenage son. This is a new low. This is disgusting. But they were fighting a tsunami with a bucket. For every post calling it a fake, there were 1,000 treating it as real. The video was catnip for Trump's opponents. It confirmed everything they wanted to believe, that Trump's own family was weary of him, that his personality was toxic, even to those closest to him. Prominent anti-Trump accounts shared it with captions like, "Listen to the children. Even his own son can't stand him," or "This is the most honest thing anyone in that family has ever said." The blue-check commentariat was having a field day at X's headquarters. The formal email from the Trump campaign landed in the inbox of the legal team. It was flagged as high priority and escalated to the Elections Integrity Council, a group Musk had formed to handle sensitive political content. This is where the machine of corporate bureaucracy, which Musk so often railed against, began to grind. The first response from X wasn't an action, it was a process. The legal team sent back a templated reply. "Thank you for reaching out. We have received your report and are reviewing the content in question to determine if it violates our policies. Due to the volume of requests, this may take some time. We appreciate your patience." "Patience?" Lasavita roared when he saw the email. "They think we're going to be patient." He forwarded the email to Trump's personal chief of staff with a single line. "They're stalling." Inside X, a debate was raging on an internal Slack channel. Priya, the junior policy analyst, was arguing vehemently for immediate removal. "This is exactly the scenario I warned about," she typed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's a targeted attack on a minor. It's a textbook violation of our deceptive and synthetic media policy. The velocity is off the charts. Every minute we wait is an abdication of our responsibility." But a senior lawyer on the team pushed back. "The policy requires verification that the content is likely to cause harm. One could argue this is political commentary. The subject is the son of a major political figure. We have to be careful not to appear to be taking sides. Removing it too quickly without a full review could be seen as caving to pressure from the Trump campaign." Someone else chimed in, "Elon's position is clear. We don't censor unless there's a direct incitement to violence." "This isn't that he's a child," Priya typed back, adding a string of exclamation points. "The harm is self-evident." Are we really going to debate this? The debate was the delay. While they argued over semantics and policy interpretation, the video was metastasizing. It had jumped from X to Instagram to TikTok to countless WhatsApp groups. It was being played on loop on cable news, with panels of experts debating its authenticity and its political implications. The harm Priya was warning about wasn't a future possibility. It was happening in real time on a global scale. Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump, had been kept away from the initial flurry. His staff wanted to have a full picture before they brought it to him. But you couldn't shield Donald Trump from a story this big for long. He was in the dining room, having lunch. When he saw it for himself on a television screen mounted on the wall, a major news network was playing the clip. A chyron at the bottom of the screen reading, "Video purportedly showing Barron Trump criticizing father goes viral." Trump put his fork down. He didn't move. He just watched the 47-second clip play out. He watched the uncannily familiar face of his son, heard the perfectly mimicked voice speak words of disappointment. The other people at the table fell silent, watching him. They expected an explosion. They expected him to throw a napkin, to start shouting at the screen, to pick up his phone and start firing people. But he did none of those things. A different kind of change came over him. The boisterous rally stage persona vanished, replaced by something still and cold. It was a stillness that was far more terrifying than any outburst. He pushed his chair back slowly, stood up, and walked out of the room without a word. His security detail, sensing the shift in gravity, fell in silently. Behind him, he walked directly to his office, the one with the picture of Barron on the desk. He shut the door, and for the first time, the team outside felt like they had lost control of the situation. The protocols and the crisis plans were irrelevant now. A line had been crossed, and the battle had just become intensely personal. The father had taken over from the politician. Inside the office, the silence was a coiled spring. Donald Trump stood at the window, his back to the door, looking out at the impossibly green golf course, but seeing none of it. His mind was a maelstrom of images. The shaky camera, the somber expression on his son's fabricated face, the words that felt like poisoned darts. He heard the door open and close softly. He knew without turning that it was his chief of staff, Don Scavino, a man who had been with him for decades and could read his moods better than anyone. "What's the view count?" Trump asked, his voice low and gravelly, devoid of its usual bombast. "North of 80 million on X alone. Sir, it's jumped platforms, it's everywhere. Our team is pushing back, calling it fake, but it's not stopping the spread. The networks are all covering it." Trump turned from the window. His face was a mask of cold fury. The usual flush of anger was absent, replaced by a pale, focused intensity. He walked to his desk and picked up the framed photograph of Barron and Melania. He looked at it for a long moment, his thumb brushing over his son's smiling face. He placed it back down with deliberate care. "Get La Civita and Jason in here. Now," he commanded, "and get me Elon Musk's personal cell number. Not his office, not his assistant. His number." Scavino nodded. "We've been trying, sir. All our tech contacts. They're saying he's unreachable. Everything is being routed through his executive office." Trump's eyes narrowed. "Unreachable? A man who lives on his own app is unreachable. Find the number. Use whatever means you have to. I don't care who you have to call. Get it." Minutes later, Chris Latsavita and Jason Miller were in the office. The door was closed. The mood was that of a war council. Latsavita, the gruff campaign manager, was already in attack mode. "We need to go on offense," Latsavita said. "Issue a statement. A video statement from you, sir. Condemn it. Expose it as a deepfake from the radical left. We can have it shot in 20 minutes. Miller, the communications strategist, agreed. "We need to control the narrative. Right now, they're controlling it. We're just reacting." Trump held up a hand, silencing them. "No, not yet. A video statement is weak. It's defensive. We're not defending, we're attacking." He looked at Scavino. "Did you get the number?" "We have a number," Scavino said, holding up his phone. "Came from a contact at SpaceX. He said there's no guarantee he'll answer." "Dial it," Trump said. "Put it on speaker." Scavino dialed. The room was silent as they listened to the phone ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, it went to a generic, automated voicemail. "The person you have called is not available. Please leave a message." Trump's jaw tightened. "Unreal," he muttered. He looked at Latsavita. "You tried from your phone." They repeated the process. Same result. Straight to voicemail. It was a digital fortress. They had the keys to the kingdom, but couldn't get past the front gate. "All right," Trump said, his voice dangerously calm. "Plan B, who is the highest-ranking executive at X, we can get on the phone right now. I want the head of legal, the head of policy, somebody with a pulse who can make a decision." Miller was already scrolling through his contacts. "I've got Linda Yaccarino's chief of staff. I can try him." Yaccarino, the CEO, was the public face of the company's business operations, brought in to reassure advertisers. She was the corporate buffer to Musk's chaotic energy. "Get him," Trump ordered. A few minutes later, Miller had the man on the phone, the voice tinny and cautious coming through the speakerphone. "Jason, good to hear from you," the man said, his voice oozing a practiced corporate smoothness. "Cut the crap, Mark," Miller said, his tone sharp. "We have a massive problem. A deepfake video of President Trump's minor son is exploding on your platform. We sent a formal request for removal 2 hours ago. We got a form letter back. The video is still up. It now has over 100 million views. What the hell is going on?" There was a pause. The man on the other end, Mark, cleared his throat. "Jason, I can assure you the matter has been escalated and is being treated with the utmost seriousness. Our trust and safety teams are actively reviewing the content to assess it against our synthetic media policies." Trump, who had been listening silently, stepped forward. "Who is this?" he boomed, his voice startling the man on the other end. Mr. President, this is Mark Connolly, Chief of Staff to the CEO." Mark, Trump said, his voice dripping with condescension. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to hang up this phone, you're going to walk down the hall, and you're going to tell whoever is in charge of pushing the buttons to take that goddamn video down. Not in an hour, not after. You've assessed it. You're going to do it now, while I'm on the phone. There was another, longer pause. The corporate smoothness in Mark's voice was replaced by a nervous stammer. Mr. President, with all due respect, there is a process. We have to be consistent in the application of our policies. If we make exceptions, it compromises the integrity of the platform. Our legal team is your legal team, Trump interrupted, his voice rising for the first time. Your legal team works for me now, you understand? They work for the American people, and I'm telling you, as the future President of the United States, that you are harboring a defamatory and illegal attack on a child. You have 60 seconds to take it down before I instruct my campaign to file a $100 billion lawsuit against you, your boss, and Elon Musk personally. 60 seconds, sir. I don't have the authority to then get me someone who does. Trump roared. Who has the authority, Mark? Does Elon have to fly his rocket back from Mars to get this done? Who is in charge over there? Our Trust and Safety Council is deliberating. Mark's voice trailed off, weak and bureaucratic. Trump laughed, a short, humorless bark. Deliberating. It's a fire, and you're deliberating what kind of water to. Yussi leaned into the phone. Mark, you are a coward. You are hiding behind a policy because you're afraid to make a decision. Tell your boss she's a coward, and tell Elon I'm coming for him. This isn't a political game anymore. He looked at Miller and made a cutting gesture across his throat. Miller ended the call. The silence that followed was heavy. The corporate stonewalling was no longer just incompetence. It felt intentional. It felt like a message. They're not going to do it, Lascivita said, stating the obvious. They're going to hide behind their process until the video has infected every corner of the internet. They're doing it on purpose. Trump walked back to the window. The attempt at using the official channels, even with his personal, menacing intervention, had failed. He had extended a hand, palm up, and they had spit in it. He knew then that he couldn't force them to act. He had to make them regret not acting it. Was then that the door opened again, this time without a knock. Melania Trump glided into the room. She was the picture of composure, dressed in a simple but elegant white dress, but her eyes betrayed a deep and searing distress. The men in the room, battle-hardened political operatives, suddenly felt like intruders in a private tragedy. She walked directly to her husband, ignoring the others. She placed a hand on his arm. "Donald," she said, her voice quiet but firm, her accent thickening slightly with emotion. "I just saw it. I saw what they are doing to our boy." Trump turned to face her, his own expression softening for a fraction of a second. He put his hands on her shoulders. "I'm handling it, Melania." "Handling it?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "It is everywhere. My friends are calling me from Slovenia. They have seen it. What will Barron think? He is at school. His friends will see this. They will say these things to him. How do you handle that?" This was the private cost, the unseen collateral damage of the public war. It wasn't about view counts or lawsuits anymore. It was about a boy in a school hallway, facing the whispers and stares born from a malicious algorithm. "I will fix it," Trump said, his voice low and reassuring. "I promise you, I will make them pay for this. They will never forget what they did today." Melania searched his face, looking for the husband and father behind the political warrior. She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath to compose herself. "He is just a boy, Donald. He is all we have, that is, ... normal." She turned and left the room as quietly as she had entered, the scent of her perfume lingering in the tense air. Trump watched her go, and something inside him seemed to harden into granite. The last vestige of political calculation evaporated. This was now a blood feud. He turned back to his team. The cold fury was back, but now it had a destination. "Forget the phones," he said. "Forget their lawyers. Forget their process." He looked at Lascivita. "We have a rally in Scranton on Thursday. Is the stage booked?" "Yes, sir. Everything's set." "Good," Trump said. "Get me the speechwriters. I'm adding a section, a new section, right at the end." He walked back to his desk, a predatory gleam in his eyes. The battlefield had been chosen. He had tried to fight them in their world, the sterile, anonymous world of corporate policy and legal threats. Now he would drag them into his. He would put Elon Musk and his entire company on trial in front of 10,000 screaming supporters and a global television audience. He was done asking. He was going to tell Dot. He picked up a pen and a blank sheet of paper. His team watched as he began to write, his handwriting firm and angry. He wasn't just drafting a speech, he was drafting a declaration of war. He was no longer trying to take the video down, he was going to make the people who let it spread wish they had never been born. The confrontation had failed to contain the problem. Now the confrontation would become the weapon. The 2 days leading up to the Scranton rally were a study in controlled chaos. The ornate Mar-a-Lago office, typically a place of formal meetings and grand pronouncements, became a tactical operations center. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and adrenaline. A large monitor on one wall displayed a live feed of cable news channels, all showing the looping deepfake video, while another screen showed the relentless upward tick of the view count, a digital scoreboard of their humiliation. Trump sat at the head of the long table, not as a candidate, but as a general. His usual freewheeling style was gone, replaced by a laser-like focus. He had dismissed the professional speechwriters after the first hour. Their drafts were too polished, too political. They used words like unfortunate, misguided, and a violation of digital ethics. Trump crossed them out with a thick black marker. "This isn't a lecture on ethics," he spat, throwing a draft onto the floor. "This is a fight. They came into my house. They put a mask on my son's face and made him dance for them. You don't respond to that with a policy paper. You respond with a fist." He began dictating, pacing the room, while Jason Miller typed furiously on a laptop, trying to keep up. The words came out raw, unfiltered, a direct line from his paternal rage. "Start with the family," Trump dictated. "Talk about what it means. A man's family is his fortress. It's sacred. Even in politics, there used to be lines. You didn't go after the kids. Obama's kids, Bush's kids, they were off limits. It was a word people understood." He stopped, looking at the screen where the deepfake Barron was still speaking his programmed lies. "Then you talk about him, the head of the snake, the guy in his spaceship, Mr. Free Speech." He said the phrase with venomous sarcasm. "He wants free speech? Let's have some. He's free to be a coward. He's free to hide behind his employees. He's free to let algorithms attack a child because he doesn't have the guts to do it himself. That's his freedom, and I have the freedom to call him what he is." His team listened, mesmerized. This was different from his usual rally riffs. This was personal. Don Jr., who had flown in that morning, sat quietly, his own expression a mixture of anger and admiration. He had been in the public firing line for years, but this felt different to him, too. An attack on Barron was an attack on the one pure thing left in their tumultuous lives. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, the digital fortress Trump had failed to breach was beginning to crack from within. The internal Slack channels at X were a raging inferno. The deliberation of the Trust and Safety Council had become a running joke, a symbol of the company's moral paralysis. A screenshot of Priya's original impassioned plea to take the video down was leaked to a tech journalist, who published it alongside the company's boilerplate legal response to the Trump campaign. The headline was devastating. X's internal chaos. Employees pleaded for removal of Barron Trump deepfake, while companies stalled. Elon Musk, insulated by layers of executives and a personal schedule that operated on a different plane of existence, could no longer ignore the firestorm. Was in a design review for a new Tesla model when his head of communications interrupted, phone in hand, his face pale. "We have a problem that's escalating into a catastrophe," the exec said. "The Trump situation. He's going on the warpath. The media is framing this as us enabling an attack on a minor. Advertisers are calling. We have a group of employees threatening a walkout." Musk leaned back from the holographic car model he'd been examining, his focus shifting. He pulled out his own phone, opened X, and scanned the trending topics. He saw the leaked Slack messages. He saw the clips of pundits condemning his platform. He saw the anger, but he interpreted it through his own unique lens as an attack on his principles. He didn't call his legal team. He didn't issue a statement. He did what he always did. He posted. Fascinating to watch the Streisand effect in real time, he wrote to his hundreds of millions of followers. A clumsy, obvious fake that would have died on its own is now being amplified into a global event by those demanding its censorship. The immune system of a free speech platform is messy, but it works. The truth will prevail. The post was like pouring gasoline on a bonfire. To his supporters, it was a brilliant defense of free speech principles. To his detractors, it was the height of sociopathic arrogance. In the war room at Mar-a-Lago, Jason Miller read the post aloud. Trump listened, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "Good," he said softly. "Perfect. He's arrogant. He's lecturing from his throne. He's not just the villain anymore. He's the smug villain. People hate that." He looked at Miller. "Make sure that post is on the teleprompter at the rally. I want to read his exact words to the world." The media frenzy intensified. The narrative Musk had hoped to control, framing this as a free speech issue, was losing ground to the much more powerful emotional narrative Trump was building, a father defending his son. Cable news booked child psychologists to talk about the emotional impact of cyberbullying. Legal experts debated whether a lawsuit against Musk personally could succeed. The deepfake itself became secondary to the looming showdown. The question wasn't whether the video was real anymore. Everyone knew it was fake. The question was what Trump was going to do about it. The world had been given a ringside seat to a fight between two of the most powerful and unpredictable men on the planet. On Thursday morning, the Florida sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue as Trump Force One taxied down the runway. Inside, the mood was electric. Donald Trump wasn't agitated or angry. He was calm, focused, a man who had chosen his weapon and his moment. He sat alone at his customary table, not reading the newspapers or watching TV, but reviewing a single sheet of paper, covered in his own handwritten notes. They were bullet points, trigger words, asterisk, sacred, fortress, coward, my son, his words. Asterisk. Susie Wiles, a senior advisor, approached his table cautiously. "Sir, the latest polls from Pennsylvania are in. We're looking very strong." Trump didn't look up from his notes. "That's good, Susie," he said, his voice even. "But that's not what today is about. Today is about one thing." He finally looked up at her, his eyes like blue ice, respect. By the time the plane descended into Scranton, the rally site was already overflowing. The Mohegan Sun Arena was packed to its 10,000-person capacity, with thousands more gathered. Outside in the parking lot, watching on massive screens, the energy was different from a typical rally. The usual, festive, carnival-like atmosphere was still there. But underneath it was a current of anger, a collective sense of grievance. These people, who felt mocked and disrespected by the elites, saw the attack on Trump's son as an attack on their own families, on their own values. They had all seen the video. They had seen the smug response from the tech billionaire. They weren't just there to be entertained. They were there to see their champion fight back. The signs they held told the story. Hands off, Barron Elon, fight a grown-up. Trump, a father first. Backstage, Trump was getting his final updates. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, vibrating through the concrete walls of the arena. He stood just behind the curtain, a silhouette against the bright stage lights. He could hear the music, Lee Greenwood's "God Bless the USA," reaching its crescendo. This was his arena. This was his world. A stage manager gave him the 1-minute signal. Trump nodded. He straightened his teeth. He glanced one last time at the piece of paper in his hand before folding it and putting it in his jacket pocket. He didn't need it. The words were seared into his memory. As he walked onto the stage, the roar that erupted was deafening. It was a wave of sound, a primal scream of support and defiance. He strode to the podium, waving, smiling, soaking it in. For the first hour, it was a classic Trump performance. He hit all his notes, the economy, the border, his political opponents. He had the crowd in the palm of his hand, laughing at his jokes, booing his enemies. Then he paused. He leaned forward on the podium, and the arena fell silent, sensing the shift. The usual playful glint in his eye was gone. "I want to talk to you about something very serious," he began, his voice dropping to a somber, intimate tone. "I want to talk about family, about what it means to be a father, a mother, about the lines that a decent society, a decent people, should never, ever cross. He let the words hang in the air. The Jumbotron screens on either side of the stage, which had been showing his face, now switched to a picture of his family. "No, my family has been through a lot," he continued. "My older kids, they chose to be in the arena with me, and they are tough and they are fighters. But my youngest son, a great boy, a wonderful boy, he didn't choose this life. We have tried, his mother and I, to give him a normal life, a private life, because he is a child. And children are sacred. They are off limits." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "But a few days ago," Trump said, his voice growing harder, "a group of sick, twisted people, cowards from the radical left, decided to cross that sacred line. They created a disgusting fake video, an AI deepfake, using my son's face and my son's voice to attack me." The crowd erupted in a chorus of boos, a raw, angry sound. "And they put this filth on the internet on a platform run by a man, a very rich man, who calls himself a genius," Trump said, his voice dripping with scorn. "And we said, take this down. This is an attack on a child." And you know what they did? Nothing. They hid behind their lawyers. They talked about their process. They deliberated. He paused, letting the anger build. And then, after letting this poison spread to hundreds of millions of people, after doing nothing, the man in charge, Elon Musk, he decided to get on his phone and post a message. Trump pulled the folded piece of paper from his pocket, a piece of theatrical brilliance. He held it up. "I want to read you his words. The words of the genius." The Jumbotron now showed a screenshot of Musk's post about the Streisand effect. Trump read it aloud, his voice full of mock intellectualism. "Fascinating to watch the Streisand effect. The immune system of a free speech platform. The truth will prevail." He crumpled the paper in his fist. "Fascinating," Trump boomed, his voice suddenly a roar that echoed through the arena. "Let me tell you what's fascinating, Elon. It's fascinating that a man with all your money and all your power is so weak, so pathetic, that he has to hide behind a computer screen while his platform is used to brutalize a 17-year-old boy. That's fascinating." The crowd was on its feet, a roaring sea of fury. "This isn't about free speech," Trump thundered, his finger jabbing at the air. "This is about decency. This is about right and wrong. This is about a father's love for his son." He leaned into the microphone, his voice dropping to a low, succinct, menacing growl that carried to the furthest corners of the arena. "So let me say this, directly to the people at X, and directly to their cowardly leader. You can have your platform, you can have your free speech, but when you use it to put lies in my son's mouth, you are no longer a businessman. You are a coward, and I will treat you like one." The explosion of sound was absolute. It was more than applause. It was a promise of allegiance, a declaration of war from 10,000 voices. Trump stood back from the podium, letting the roar wash over him. He had taken their digital weapon and melted it down, reforging it into a sword of his own, on his own terms, in his own arena. The blow-blow confrontation was over. The aftermath was about to begin. The moment Trump finished speaking, the digital world detonated. His final line, "You are no longer a businessman. You are a coward, and I will treat you like one," was clipped and posted on X within seconds. It became a viral entity in itself, a piece of political theater so potent it transcended partisan lines. The hashtags #TrumpTheFather and #ELON is a CO word exploded across the platform, ironically making Trump's attack the dominant trend on Musk's own app. The conversation had been violently and irrevocably wrenched from the hands of the tech elites and media pundits. It now belonged to Trump. At X headquarters, the mood shifted from panicked deliberation to sheer terror. The video of Trump's speech was playing on every monitor. The word coward echoed in the hallways. It was a brand killer, a personal insult that cut deeper than any legal threat or advertiser boycott. It struck at the heart of Musk's carefully cultivated image as a fearless, world-changing innovator. Within 15 minutes of the speech ending, with no formal announcement or explanation, the original deepfake video, along with its thousands of copies, was quietly and systematically scrubbed from X's servers. The anonymous account that had first posted it was suspended. The stable door was slammed shut long after the horse had bolted. won the Derby, and was now on a victory lap. On the flight back to Palm Beach, the atmosphere inside Trump Force One was jubilant. Aides who had been tense and grim-faced for 2 days were now laughing, clapping each other on the back, and reading laudatory social media posts aloud. Trump sat at his table, a Diet Coke in hand, watching the cable news coverage on a large screen. The same commentators who had spent the last 48 hours dissecting the damaging deepfake were now analyzing his speech with a sense of awe. This was a masterclass in political jujitsu, one analyst said, shaking his head. He took an attack on him and turned it into a defense of family. He made himself the relatable father and cast a tech billionaire as the out-of-touch villain. You're going to see his polling numbers with suburban women go up after this. Another chimed in. The coward line was devastating. How does Musk respond to that? He can't. If he hits back, he's proving Trump's point by fighting a man who is positioning himself as a grieving father. If he stays silent, he looks weak. Trump put him in a box. Trump watched, a faint smile on his face, but the triumphant glow didn't fully reach his eyes. The public victory was absolute, a total rout. He had faced down a new kind of enemy and bent the narrative to his will. But as the plane began its descent over the dark, glittering waters of the Atlantic, the roar of the crowd in Scranton began to fade. Replaced by a much quieter, more unsettling reality he had to face back on the ground. He arrived at close to midnight. The familiar drive through the gates felt different tonight. The towering palm trees, usually symbols of his success, seemed to cast long, somber shadows. He bypassed the main club, heading directly to the private residence. The boisterous energy of his staff and security detail fell away as he stepped inside, leaving him in the profound quiet of his home. Melania was waiting for him in the living room. She wasn't watching the news. She was sitting in a chair, a book, open but unread in her lap. The room was softly lit, a stark contrast to the harsh glare of the rally stage. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "I saw the speech," she said, her voice neutral. "We hit them hard," Trump replied, unknotting his tie. "They're in a full panic. The video is gone. They took it all down." "Good," she said. But there was no relief in her tone. She stood up and walked over to him, her eyes searching his. "You were a lion tonight, Donald, for the whole world to see. But now the world is gone, and we are home. Did you fix it for him?" The question hung. In the air between them, the political victory meant little in this room. The only metric that mattered here was the well-being of their son. "I don't know," Trump admitted, the bravado finally falling away, leaving a weary man in its place. "I did what I had to do. I had to fight back. It's the only way I know." "He is upstairs," Melania said. "He waited up for you." Trump nodded slowly. This was the part of the battle he couldn't delegate, the one he couldn't win with a clever line or a roaring crowd. He walked up the grand staircase, each step feeling heavier than the last. He found Barron in his bedroom sitting at his desk, a history textbook open in front of him. The room was that of a typical teenager, a video game console, posters on the wall, clothes draped over a chair. A pocket of normalcy besieged by a very abnormal world. Barron looked up when his father entered. He was tall, almost as tall as Trump himself, but tonight he looked young and vulnerable. He didn't say anything at first, just watched his father Trump close the door and sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't know where to begin. "Tough couple of days, huh?" he said, his voice softer than almost anyone had ever heard it. Barron shrugged, pushing a pen around on his desk. "I saw your speech. Mom showed me you were... loud." "I had to be," Trump said. "When someone pushes you, you have to push back harder. You have to make them afraid to ever push you again. You understand that?" Barron was silent for a moment. Then he looked directly at his father, his eyes clear and unflinching. "I understand," he said, "but... why did they do it? Why did they use me?" He wasn't asking about the political strategy of Trump's opponents. It was a simpler, more profound question. Why do they hate you so much that they have to do something like that? The question struck Trump with more force than any political attack. It was the question at the heart of it all, the one he could never fully answer. How could he explain the visceral, all-consuming nature of the hatred directed at him? How could he explain it to the person who is now being used as ammunition in that war? "Because they're weak," Trump said, leaning forward, and they think, I'm strong. And when weak people can't win a fair fight, they cheat, they lie, they go after the things you love most because they know it's the only way they can hurt you. He reached out and put a hand on his son's shoulder. This has nothing to do with you, Barron. You know that, right? You are a great son. You are strong and smart and handsome. This is about me. They're just using you to get to me. It feels like it's about me, Barron said quietly, looking down. My friends at school ... That? They're trying to be normal, but they're weird now. They don't know what to say. One of them showed me the video on his phone before it got taken down. He thought he was helping. The voice ... It sounded like me. He shuddered slightly. It was like watching a ghost. The private cost of the victory was laid bare in that one sentence. A ghost of himself, created by an algorithm, was now walking the halls of his school, poisoning his friendships, haunting his life. For all the roaring crowds and trending hashtags, Trump couldn't erase that ghost. All he could do was sit with his son in the quiet of the night and stand guard. We will get through this, Trump said, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely showed. They picked a fight with the wrong family. They will regret this day for the rest of their lives. I promise you that. He stayed for a long time, not talking much more, just being there. The exhaustion of the past 48 hours settled deep into his bones. The public fight had been invigorating, a shot of pure political adrenaline. The private fight was just draining. There was no cheering crowd here, no clear victory, only the quiet, ongoing work of trying to shield a child from a world that had lost all sense of decency. Downstairs, his phone was buzzing with messages of congratulations from politicians and supporters. One message, however, was from the head of his security detail. It was a forwarded alert from the FBI's National Threat Operations Center. We are observing a significant uptick in online threats originating from the Trump-Musk situation. The alert read, threats are being directed at both principals. We have flagged credible threats of violence against Musk's family and physical locations associated with Tesla. Similarly, we are tracking renewed threats against the Trump family, specifically mentioning Barron Trump. We advise heightened security protocols for all parties. Trump read the message and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The fire he had started to protect his son was now threatening to burn everything down. He had won, but the war, he realized, was far from over. In the week that followed the Scranton rally, the public square remained a battleground. The discourse was locked in a vicious partisan cycle. To Trump's supporters, he was a hero father. To his detractors, his speech was a dangerous escalation of rhetoric. Elon Musk, after a few days of silence, re-emerged on X with a series of posts about the importance of unmoderated speech, defiantly refusing to apologize. The debate was loud, furious, and going nowhere. It was a stalemate, fought along the same tired political trenches. The person who broke the deadlock was the last one anyone expected. Dr. Eris Thorne was a professor of AI ethics at Stanford University, a man known for his quiet demeanor, his piercing intellect, and his public disdain for both Donald Trump's politics and Silicon Valley's messianic culture. He was a frequent guest on PBS and NPR, a darling of the intellectual left who had once called Trump a symptom of our society's flight from reason. On the Tuesday following the rally, the New York Times published an op-ed by him under the headline, "I detest Trump's politics. I defend his son's humanity." The article was a sensation. Dr. Thorne began by stating his credentials as a Trump critic, but then pivoted sharply. For the past week, he wrote, we have been debating the politics of a deepfake. We are asking the wrong questions. This is not a political issue. It is an anthropological one. The moment we sanction the use of a child's likeness as a weapon in our political wars is the moment we sever ties with a fundamental human ethic. It is an act of technological soul-stealing. He then took direct aim at Elon Musk, not as a political opponent, but as a fellow technologist. The argument for absolute free speech in the face of such a violation is a category error, Thorne argued. It is the logic of an engineer who sees society as a system to be optimized, not a community to be nurtured, a platform that cannot distinguish between political debate and the digital brutalization of a minor is not a town square. It is a failed state. What the Trump campaign was demanding was not censorship. It was a basic act of civic hygiene. The op-ed electrified the conversation. Because it came from a respected anti-Trump source, it could not be dismissed as partisan. Hackeriot gave permission for liberals and centrists who were loath to ever side with Trump to condemn the attack on his son without feeling like they were endorsing his politics. The debate shifted overnight. The new question was Trump's response appropriate? But what are the rules for AI? Dr. Thorne had, in a single essay, handed Donald Trump the moral high ground on a silver platter. Trump saw the opportunity instantly. The day the op-ed was published, he instructed his team to cancel all his planned campaign appearances for the rest of the week. He wasn't going to dilute the moment with more rallies. The warrior had done his job. Now, it was time for the statesman. He announced he would be delivering a formal address to the nation from his office at Mar-a-Lago on Friday evening. On Friday, there was no cheering crowd, no rock music, no red hats. There was only Donald Trump, sitting behind his desk, flanked by the American and presidential flags. The camera was tight on his face. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and serious. "My fellow Americans," he began. "This week, my family went through an ordeal that I would not wish upon any parent. My youngest son, a wonderful young man, was the victim of a new and dangerous kind of attack. His face, his voice, his identity were stolen by a machine and used to tell vicious lies for political sport." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "I responded as a father with anger and with force, and I do not apologize for that. But today, I am not speaking to you as a father, or even as a candidate. I am speaking to you as an American, concerned for the future of our country." He did not mention Elon Musk. He did not mention X. He didn't have to. "We stand at the dawn of a new age," he continued, "the age of artificial intelligence. It holds the promise of curing diseases, solving impossible problems, and unlocking new frontiers of human potential. But it also holds the peril of a world where truth is meaningless, where our very identities can be forged and weaponized, where our children can be turned into digital puppets. This is not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. It is a human issue." He leaned forward, his gaze direct and compelling. "We cannot allow our laws to lag so far behind our technology. We must establish new rules for this new world. That is why, today, I am calling on Congress to come together and pass a bipartisan Digital Dignity Act. This act would establish that your digital likeness-sewer face, your voices, your personal property. It would make it a federal crime. To use AI to create a malicious and defamatory deepfake of any American citizen, and it would provide special, heightened protections for our children who are the most vulnerable." He was elevating the entire conflict. He was taking his personal grievance and transforming it into a principled national cause. "We must build a world where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. Where our town squares, whether real or digital, are places of debate, not degradation. And where every family can feel safe in the knowledge that their children's dignity is protected by the full force of American law. This will be a cornerstone of my mission when I return to the White House." He ended the address simply, without flourish. "Thank you, and God bless America." The screen went dark. The performance was complete. He had taken the ugliest of political attacks and used it to position himself as the protector of all American families against the frightening chaos of the modern world. 1 month later, the news cycle had moved on. The Digital Dignity Act was being debated in congressional committees, and the memory of the deepfake had begun to fade. In a classroom in Des Moines, Iowa, the setting sun cast a golden light through the windows. The members of the North High School Debate Club were practicing for their upcoming state tournament. A 17-year-old girl named Maya stood nervously at a lectern, her hands shaking as she clutched a stack of note cards. Her topic was resolved. An individual's digital likeness should be afforded the same legal protections as their physical property. She was struggling, her voice quiet and uncertain as she rehearsed her opening statement. Her teacher, a young civics instructor named Mr. Davies, watched her from the back of the room. He saw her fear. During a short break, he walked up to her. "You have the arguments, Maya," he said gently. "You know the material. You just need to find your voice. Why did you choose this topic?" "Because of what happened to my cousin last year," she whispered, looking down. "Some boys in her school took her Instagram photos and used an app, too. to make fake pictures of her. They spread them all over. The school didn't do anything. The police said it wasn't technically illegal. It ruined her whole year. Mr. Davies nodded slowly. He walked to the whiteboard at the front of the room and picked up a marker. He wrote a single sentence on the board in clear, block letters. Asterisk, we must build a world where technology serves humanity, not the other way around. Asterisk, Maya read the words, "Who said that?" "Donald Trump," Mr. Davies replied. Maya looked surprised. "But we don't like him." "It doesn't matter," her teacher said, turning to face her. "It doesn't matter what you think of the person who said it. What matters is that the idea is right." He was talking about his son, but he could have been talking about your cousin. He was talking about a line that needs to be drawn to protect people. Your job as a debater isn't just to win points, it's to find the truth in an argument and defend it with clarity and with passion. Forget who said it. Make it your own. Maya looked at the quote on the board. She thought about her cousin. She thought about a world where technology served humanity. Something shifted in her eyes. The fear was replaced by a flicker of resolve. When the break was over, she walked back to the lectern. She put her note cards down. She looked out at the empty chairs, took a deep breath, and began to speak. Her voice was no longer quiet. It was clear, it was strong, and it was hers. The echo of a father's rage, forged in a political firestorm, had found its way into a quiet classroom in Iowa, where it had become something else entirely. The spark of a young woman's conviction. What does it truly mean to own your own face? In an age of artificial intelligence, that question is no longer philosophical. If this story made you think, subscribe for more real stories about the lines we draw in a rapidly changing world.